Hi Cody, thanks for the footage. And before we go on, well done on your progress so far. Glad that the ball striking is improving and you're enjoying your golf a little bit more. So if we can try and get the driver under control, as you said, we should start to see some marked improvements in your overall scoring as well and your enjoyment of the game. So some things you may see here that are slightly different to what you see in your iron swing. That's not a unique phenomenon. That's something that's quite common amongst golfers. The driver is a very different beast than the irons, and some players do demonstrate sort of unique tendencies. So don't worry too much if you do see something that contradicts what you would normally see. The main thing is to just focus on the driver, in your case is almost like a specialty shot or specialty club, and just try and hone in on a few priorities in relation to improving your angle of attack into the golf ball and your ability to hit out at the golf ball for longer, as well as improving your ability to generate some power that you seem to have lost over the last few years. So as before, I'm just going to go over some sort of key points with you that I don't particularly like about the way you're moving with the driver, and then we'll get the model swing up, look at some comparisons and give you some key sort of feels or concepts to focus on. So first and foremost, we'll look at it from setup. With your irons, you tend to get the centres on top of one another, which is fine when you're hitting down on a golf ball, but when you're trying to level out the angle of attack, one of the things I'd like to see you do is, whilst keeping the upper centre of the shoulder turn in the centre of the stance like you're demonstrating here, I'd like to see you just push the pelvis forward a couple of inches. That would reposition the lower centre forward and give you a little bit more side bend or axis tilt at setup, and just a little bit more angle in the shoulders, which would be a little bit more appropriate for hitting your driver the way you want to. In regards to the side bend, I would look to try and create anywhere between sort of 5 to 10 degrees difference between the lower centre and the upper centre, but you create that by pushing the pelvis forward, not by dropping the head back. So I like the positioning of your upper centre, but I'd like to see the lower centre push forward just a little bit, maybe a couple of inches. That would help you create a much fuller turn on the way back in a more appropriate manner, and allow you to learn and have the ability to hit out at the golf ball for longer during the through swing, which is very evident when we look at the down the line footage. So with that in mind, sort of pushing the pelvis forward an inch or so, maybe 2 inches maximum at P1. The big concern would be the trajectory of the lead shoulder and the way the lead knee works. So I've just put on there some arrows. The lead knee should be working inwards behind the ball, courtesy of the turning of the pelvis, but it should also be flexing towards the target line, as indicated by the red arrows, which would get your lead knee working sort of inwards and downwards throughout the backswing. At the moment, there's too much inwards, so there's a lot of turning, but that turning is not on a tilted angle, which is why when we look at it from down the line, we can see a marked increase in your inclination from around about 2.5 to 4. You can see your head coming up out of that blue circle quite substantially. And that fits in with when your lead knee starts to, it doesn't really flex towards the target line enough, but when it stops flexing towards the target line and just starts to work in behind the ball, there's a definite link between that, the lead shoulder working up and to level. So the trajectory of your lead shoulder from the yellow dot at P1 to P4 is to level, which is why the head's coming out of the circle when viewed from down the line. So the way the knees work, and particularly the lead knee, the way the shoulder works, and why the head is coming out of that circle and you're gaining height during your backswing. There's also a purple arrow on there, which is indicating where your sort of eye line is at P4. And also you could use the sort of where the ear points at P4 as a little bit of a reference, and you'll see that when we look at the model swing, your extension is not enough in the neck, so the neck tilts are not great enough, which is a shame because the upper part of your spine is the most flexible portion of it, so you're robbing yourself of quite a lot of mobility, and it's also giving you issues in regards to your inclination to the ground and your ability to work the lead shoulder down, etc, etc. So we'll work a little bit on the neck tilts as well during this session. During the downswing, you've lifted a tremendous amount. I'm just going to get this again. I put a green line on the screen to indicate where the trail shoulder was at P1. And you can see by the time you get to sort of P5, 5.5, you can see how high the trail shoulder is here compared to where it was at P1. So trail shoulder stays very high. The side bend that should be away from the target because of the movement of the pelvis forward is actually, when we're looking at it at this point, towards the target. So there's the tendency to have a steep angle of attack. The trail shoulder being so high means that the wrist angles have got to come out. As soon as the wrist angles start to come out, the club kicks out in front of you too much. Gets very left shifted. Left shifted swings tend to be steep swings. That would explain the tendency to hit it high up on the face, pop it up in the air, toe strikes, etc, etc. And we can see that there's a very low exit with a swing across the ball. Quite a lot of roll in there as well. So all in all, it's not ideal for hitting driver a long way and in a very predictable manner. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the model swing up and start to go over some changes that I'd like to see you make, some concepts that I'd like to see you introduce into your own game. Before I do that, I'm going to very quickly look at this down the line footage, and one of the things that I want you to feel through the ball is I want you to feel like you're going to swing out in this direction more. Now, I'm going to give you some backswing thoughts, obviously, to help encourage that anyway. But when you're hitting shots with driver, I want you to feel like your hand path is much more out, away from you, rather than in and across you. So just bear that in mind when we come towards the end of the session, because that's one thing that you need to definitely focus on when hitting shots. And what I'll do is, as before, I'll do a quick sort of few videos of the drills, and I'll send them across via Messenger so that you can just quick fire watch those, and I'll demonstrate the drills for you. So anything we talk about during the session, I'll demonstrate the drills and fire them across to you upon completion of this session. So we just bring a model swing up now, and we're going to spend the time looking predominantly from face on. Okay, so on the right we have Troy Matterson hitting driver versus yourself, obviously, and you can see straight away I've put some lines on there to indicate the main areas of focus at this point, which is the positioning of the lower centre in relation to the upper centre, the action of the lead knee, and the tilt in the neck during the backswing. I'm also going to put one more thing on there, which is the lead shoulder at P1. And you'll start to see that the lead shoulder, the lead knee, and the tilt in the neck all start to match up with one another quite nicely. So in our case, on the left, the lead shoulder works too level. The lead knee does not flex towards the target line enough. And the neck tilts are very, very limited. So at this point at P4, we've got the lead ear is sort of pointing ever so slightly skywards. The lead shoulder has worked very level, and the lead knee has worked across more than it's worked towards the target line by quite a substantial amount, and that's creating quite a level turn of the hips. In Troy's case, the lead knee is going to flex towards the ball to target line much more. So we focus on the movement of the lead knee at this point. So as well as moving in because of the turning of the pelvis, it's also flexing towards the target line more. So the lead knee is working down and across more. The neck tilts are substantially greater, and the lead ear now is pointing more towards the ground, and the trajectory of the lead shoulder is more down and across. So the way the knees work, the way the shoulders work, are directly linked. And if the lead shoulder is down more, then the head is going to lift up less during the backswing. So we've got too much emphasis on the left on turning rather than turning on a tilted angle. So the player on the left, that's yourself, turning to level, whereas Troy is working on turning on a tilted angle. So there's a little bit more side bend going in and a little bit less emphasis on the rotational aspect. So the turn that we make is not a level one. The lead shoulder is working down, and the lead shoulder is working down courtesy of what the knee is doing, the lead knee. So it's moving inwards and towards the target line, and there's a change in the neck tilts as well. So Troy's extending his trail leg, his pelvis, his spine, and his neck. In your case, you're extending the trail leg quite a lot. You're not extending the pelvis as much as you could do. You're trying to extend the spine, but you're not extending the neck enough. So if we just clear all those lines off and we look at the general sort of differences between these two players, P1 to P4, ear to the ground. P1 to P4, ear to the sky. P1 to P4, chest to the sky. P1 to P4, chest to the ground. P1 to P4, knee works towards the ball to target line. P1 to P4, knee works in behind the golf ball. So the turn is too level, it isn't tilted enough. The tilt comes from the way the knees change flex and also adding some tilt in the neck during the backswing. So the key thought for you initially from P1 to P4 would be one of those three moves that I've just discussed. I really like the ear to the ground one. I've had some great results with that with clients on the mat in front of me, and we just say, right, set up, point the ear to the ground. What I'd really like to do is video yourself doing that before you hit balls. So just take your setup. It doesn't have to be a load of swings in either, just maybe first or second attempt at it. Set up at P1, push the pelvis slightly more towards the target, as we saw with Troy at setup. And then from that further forward with the lower centre position, just make a backswing where you feel like you're going to point your lead ear, your left ear, down to the ground. Film it, send it across, let me do a comparison, because you'll have the shock of your life when you see the difference between those two moves. Once you've done that, or as you've done that, send me one across where you'll go pelvis forward, ear to the ground, but film it from down the line as well, and let's have a little look at how much better the head stays on the wall or your inclination is maintained when you do that. And like I say, you'll get a real shock when you see the impact such a simple thought or simple move can have. Now from that position, one of the things that you really need to calm down now is the sort of the rate at which you want to turn through that golf ball. So you can see as you get back, that lead shoulder again works very level and across. Now, whilst that's evident, I'd really like to see how that changes due to the backswing changes that we've just discussed, and also that sort of sensation of hitting out to the right more on the way through that I gave you a little bit earlier in this session. And what I'd like to do is sort of follow on a little bit from this in a day or so's time. If you can get me a little bit of footage across of you doing the feels that I've just explained to you, sort of P1, pelvis forward, ear to the ground at P4, swinging out to the right as you come through impact. And I'd like to just complete this session by doing a little bit of a comparison of you demonstrating those moves as opposed to the moves that you're showing me in this footage, so that you can see the differences and that you can sort of get your head around how this is going to impact on your ability to hit and launch driver in an appropriate manner. So what I'd like to do now is leave this with you in the next day or so. If you can get me some footage of you doing the feels that we've discussed, and then I'll complete this session with a very brief comparison that I'll send across to you, that'll get things across, that'll drive things home to you, I feel, in a more appropriate manner. So hope that makes sense. If you've got any questions, feel free to fire them across. Once I get the next little bit of footage off you, I'll complete this session and send you the comparison over.